Double hook squid. We're going to rig a double hook squid for daytime sword fishing. We're going to try and pick a little bit of a larger squid, probably a 300-gram squid. We're going to do a couple things before we actually get to the rigging portion of it. The squid itself, because it's so pliable, makes it a little difficult to rig, but we're going to do the best we can here. On a 300-gram squid, which is a little larger, I'm going to go with my larger 11/0 hooks. Same tuna bend, but I'm going to make that double hook set. I'm going to show you real easy how to actually assemble that thing. Just go ahead with your 300-pound mono, put your E crimp on there, get a good crimp with a little bit of a loop there at the eye. Then what you're going to do is, to make it easy, take your other crimp, and when you put the hook on, always put it towards facing this direction, and it'll end up facing right. So put it towards the other hook so they're facing each other. Go through the crimp. Now before you cinch it down, keep yourself a little bit of a loop. That way if you need to make an adjustment, you can. Don't pull this crimp way up against there and crease that mono. What I do at that point is I'll actually take this hook and turn it back over on itself, so that I have the hook sitting right there at the base of the other hook. Okay? Right in that fashion. So if I know once I got my hook lined up, I'll pull this back over and then I'll crimp my hook in place. But I still will leave a little bit of a loop there. Go ahead and grab your diamond crimpers. Leave a little bit of an edge outside that crimp again, making sure you got a little elephant ear on the end to allow that mono to flex outside that crimp. Okay. Once you've finished your crimp, 3 even crimps, allowing that little piece on the end, go ahead and trim the tag end off. At that point you're set with 2 hooks. What I'm going to do now, on my bottom hook, the hook that's lower in the squid, I'm going to actually tape this section. Basically, I don't want that thing to swing freely. I want it to kind of be somewhat stiff rigged a little bit. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to grab a little bit of tape. And not a lot, we only need to go through here a couple times. So when you grab that electrical tape, put that right there, just get it started, and then you can kind of seat that tape. Go around one time, pull it tight, kind of squeeze it on there, come back around and do it again. Pretty thin tape, although it allows me to be able to keep my hook somewhat straight. I don't want to tape the whole section of, at some point I do want flexibility to this hook, especially when the fish is hooked and you're actually changing angles, but for rigging purposes, right this second, I can keep that hook straight if I need to keep it straight. Yeah. Alright, here we go. Squid time. Probably a main staple in the diet for swordfish is no doubt a squid of all different shapes and sizes. You've got a multitude of different types of squid. The squid we're using is 300 grams. This is a pretty large squid. One thing about squid, prior to rigging it, make sure you got a good quality squid. A lot of times the walls of this mantle are very, very thin, and if that squid's laid around or it's been thawed out a few times, it's very, very difficult to rig. This bait is relatively difficult again because the actual squid itself is hard to deal with. So we're going to do our best to get this done. Just kind of bear with us and look at it. As far as using a squid in daytime sword fishing, I use a squid. I find myself using a squid in certain areas of the country where there's a lot of squids. They do like to eat squid in those places. We've gone to a couple locations where we've really, really caught a lot of fish on squid. In Florida, it's probably 3rd or 4th on my list. I noticed that in the course of a day, I may file through a Panama bait or some other baits prior to getting to this, and a lot of times when you go to the old faithful squid, all of a sudden they're all over it and they eat it. But it seems to be 3 or 4 baits down the line for me just because of the fact that it's soft. So again, we're going to rig this. We'll go through it. You'll see the different stitches I do. But again, it is a squid. It's a little tough to rig, so bear with me. we're going to take our double hook rig set. We're going to remember that this one with our tape, which is the stiff hook, is going to be at the lower portion. Now, imagining that this was inside the squid, my end result will be something of this nature. This hook, I'd like to have it up, and I'd like to have that back hook up as well, coming out at that point. Now, if you look up here at the top of the squid, you got to remember that the eye of that hook is not going to really go much past that point. So at that point, that's where I'm going to start measuring up the distances in these hooks and where I'm going to cut the openings for these hooks. So right now, look here at this particular section, stop your hook, hold it the best you can right there in place, grab your knife, go in, run your knife down the back side of that hook. That'll give you your opening where you're going to go in. Now this back hook, once you've got that one, don't worry about, let that front one lay over. Go right down, find where that hook's going to come out, make your incision at that point. So now we've made 2 cuts in that squid. At this point, this is probably one of the most difficult parts, is getting these hooks inside here without ruining the squid and making it look as natural as we can. So let's give it a shot here. Basically what we're going to do is we got to pick this squid up. We got to find that hole that we made first here at the top. Now your bottom hook's going to go inside that hole, and it's got to make its way down to that secondary hole there. And you want it to come right out where it was, because that's where you need that hook to place. So there we go. We're coming out. Once we come out of that squid, at that point, I'm going to pull that hook into the squid. Sometimes it's a little difficult, so bear with it. There it is. Pull the eye in. Now you've got to pull this in all the way to get this eye inside this hole. So what you got to do, as you pull down, go ahead and keep pulling it down through the squid until that eye is actually about there. Once that second eye reaches into that squid, turn it on itself, push the back end back through, and now you've got both hooks inside the squid. As I push them forward, you can see that that is really, they're almost wanting to stand straight up and down on their own. So right there, at that point, I know I'm lined up perfectly. I'm going to actually pick this up. I'm going to let you see it from this angle. I'm holding the eye of this hook right there in the front. Now as far as this goes, you can always stitch that back hook once this bait is rigged. If you wanted it to be a really stiff rig, I can go in there and actually stitch around this. But I like it tight, but not tight enough to where it's almost rigged like a stiff hooked lure. So it's got a little bit of play to it down here. I've got the eye of the hook up here in the front of the squid, and I feel like I'm perched and ready to be able to do this thing right. So let's go ahead and take the next step. What we're going to do now, let's get our mono. We're going to stick with the 300. Even though these are big baits, we're staying with 300 pound. The great thing about a squid is that no matter what, even at a half a knot of tide, this is probably in those places where you've got very little tide, this bait will always have action to it no matter how minimal the tide is. Go ahead and put your crimp on your 300 pound Momoy, extra hard. Cut that mono at an angle. Once you've done that, go ahead and find the eye of the hook. If that's pointy enough, that should be able to go through. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I'm pushing through the eye of the hook. Mono's gone through the eye of the hook. I'm going to actually turn it on its side and try and pull the hook out. Got to remember, guys, when you're going through something you can't see, you got to really feel it underneath and make sure you're going through it. And once you feel like you've gone through it, let's go ahead and pull on that hook to see if we can pull it out of the squid, which Once you've pulled on it, you've gone through the eye of the hook. So we've gone through the eye. We're going to pull our mono out the top. We're going to go into the crimp, and we're going to actually get that up towards the top of the squid there. Pull it down just right at the tip of the squid. That's where you're going to lay your crimp. Okay. Don't worry about this being exposed, this monofilament. I'm going to show you why in a second. But right now we're going to go ahead and crimp this. Leave that elephant ear out there. Don't crimp to the edge. Make sure you got a good hard crimp. Okay, here we go. The hard part is over. Hooks are in our squid. Let's clean up our area so like we actually know what we're doing around here. Alright, everything's nice. Got our ingredients, our tools. We're ready to make a nice squid here. Okay, at this point I'm looking at everything and I'm happy with what I see. Everything's balanced, everything's good. The next, you can start at a couple of different areas on this. This isn't really structured like a fish is. So one thing I know with a squid, even night fishing for years, basically with this head, obviously the head's hanging way outside of this squid. So I'm going to stitch that head onto the body of the squid. Go ahead and grab yourself some floss. You can get your needle. Now the one little key ingredient here with stitching that head on, sometimes if you hit the eye, you get some black ink right on your glasses. Alright, here we go. I'm going to go through this side of the mantle. I'm just going to poke it and I'm going to feel my needle inside so I know I'm not in that section. I'm going to push the head up in there just to where that eye is, right on the edge of that body. I'm going to grab it. I'm going to go through it. Now I'm going to push it up in there and I'm going to come out the other side through this side of the mantle. I'm going to come back again to this side, go through, I'm going to grab it again. I'm going to push it up in there. We used to do one stitch, but now I kind of like to do 2 stitches here. I'm going to pull it back through on this side. Now basically at that point I'm going to grab that floss on the other side and come underneath. That way I've got this head secured. You can see right there the stuff coming out of the eye there. I don't know the exact terminology for that, but we know it's nasty. Go ahead and tighten down and do your overhand loop knot. Now you got something that looks relatively real. A squid doesn't keep his head 3 inches outside of his body, so you've made it more sturdy. The eyes are right at the edge there. Go ahead and clip off the extra. So here we go. Hooks are in, head's on. You got your crimp on. Now what we got to do with this squid is we got to fasten it to the monofilament here so that it rides nice. So let's do this. Take a good 12-inch piece of floss. One thing about squid, it's definitely a lot easier to work with when they're a little drier. Like I said before, I do like to keep my baits in a freezer for a little while after they've thawed out, just to get them firm enough and dry enough. We got our floss on. We're holding our crimp right there at the tip. Now all we're doing at this point is tying this squid to the actual mono. Okay? Just to keep it in line. I'm going through the squid and out the other side. Coming back towards me, going through the squid and out the other side. Now I'm going to come back down, go through the original hole, back out the other side. At this point, what I do is I actually will push down on that mono to get a little bit of a crease in my mono there at the hook. That'll allow you to be able to cinch down the actual floss to the monofilament. So I'm going to push down a little bit more. I'm going to come further down, go through the towel as well with my needle. Don't try this at home. Alright, here we go. 2 tag ends. Pushed my mono down. My monofilament is attached to the squid via the floss. Make a loop knot. And again, sometimes it's a loop knot, sometimes it's an overhand knot. Loop knot, it doesn't really matter. They both work well. Go ahead and cinch it down real good right there. At that point, come with your clippers, trim it off. Now, at that point, feeling good about my squid. I feel like the hard part's done. I kind of want to make sure that this is where I need it to be. I don't want it to, a lot of times if a swordfish swats this, I really would like this to have more stitching up here. And we got nothing but time. I mean, this is all we have to do. I mean, people don't have to work or anything, so we might as well go ahead and put in another stitch. Remember, guys, everything that we're doing here does take a lot of time, effort, and energy. So, again, if you're going to do it right. Do it right the first time, or at least try to. Here we go. I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to come in here within my stitches so I know that I've got some backbone to it. I've gone through the stitches. I'm going to actually, if you look close here, I've left a little tag end outside my crimp. Now, one of two things. I'm going to go in again inside those stitches and come out. Just giving me a fastening point. Pull everything tight. What I do at that point is I'm going to actually take one tag end of that and I'm going to come inside that little tag end. Now that'll really allow this to be able to pull straight. At that point, take your 2 tag ends, make your loop knot. I know it's hard to see, so bear with us. This is not an easy one. At this point, grab the 2 tag ends, pull her down tight. Push down on your mono. You've created a little safety net right here by that extra piece of floss now. Trim it off. Okay, one last stitch, because we all love to stitch. And we use a lot of floss. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to stabilize that stitch by taking my floss underneath, pulling tight, pulling down. Okay. At that point, this is really, to be honest with you, you control this squid. This squid is definitely hardy enough to be able to troll, and you shouldn't have any problem doing that if you wanted to. On the way in, a lot of times we actually catch a lot of big dolphin when we're on the way in, and we'll put this right out there. Nonetheless, there's your double hook squid, ready to eat. Come on.